I didn't decide to become the one who stayed. There was no family meeting, no agreement, no clear moment where responsibility was assigned. It happened the way these things always seem to happen, quietly, gradually, through small assumptions that hardened into expectations. At first, it was temporary, just until things stabilized, just until someone else had more time, just until the situation became clearer. I told myself that over and over, believing it each time, because believing it made the weight feel lighter, or at least manageable. My parents were still themselves in many ways back then. Slower, yes, more forgetful, a little more fragile, but still proud, still independent in spirit. They didn't ask for help easily, and I didn't offer it with any sense of permanence. I was just around more. That's how everyone framed it, as if proximity were not already a form of commitment. My siblings lived their lives at a reasonable distance, not far enough to be absent, but far enough to be unavailable. They had jobs, families, routines that could not be easily disrupted, or so it was said. I had those things too, but somehow mine felt more flexible in everyone's eyes, including my own. At first, I felt useful, needed, even virtuous in a quiet way. I liked being the one who knew the medications, the appointments, the subtle changes in mood that others missed. I told myself this closeness was a privilege, a chance to give back, and in the beginning, it truly felt that way. But slowly, without ceremony, usefulness turned into obligation. I noticed it in the language people used. You're so good with them. They're calmer when you're around. It's just easier if you handle it. These weren't compliments. They were decisions disguised as praise. And each time I accepted them, I unknowingly signed another invisible contract. I stopped being asked and started being assumed. When I tried to explain how tired I was, the response was rarely unkind. It was worse than that. It was understanding without action, sympathy without redistribution. Everyone agreed it was a lot. And then everyone returned to their lives, relieved that someone else was holding the center. I began to live in a constant state of low-grade alert, always listening for movement at night, always planning my day around potential emergencies. Even when nothing was happening, my body behaved as if something might at any moment. Rest stopped feeling restorative. It became just another pause before responsibility resumed. What unsettled me most wasn't the physical work. It was the emotional erosion. The way my own needs started to feel inappropriate, almost indulgent. The way I edited my thoughts before sharing them, so I wouldn't sound resentful or ungrateful. The way I stopped asking for help because explaining felt heavier than doing. There were moments when I questioned my own perception. Was it really that unequal? Or was I exaggerating because I was closer to the situation? I replayed conversations in my head, wondering if I had volunteered more than I remembered. Maybe I had created this dynamic myself. That thought haunted me, because if it were true, then I had no one to be angry with but myself. Gaslighting doesn't always come from others. Sometimes it's internal, a survival strategy disguised as humility. I watched my siblings interact with my parents during visits. They were warm, attentive, generous in short bursts. They brought gifts, took photos, made promises about calling more often. And everyone, including my parents, seemed lighter in their presence. I felt invisible during those moments, reduced to a background role, a facilitator of harmony. After they left, everything fell back into my hands. The aftermath, the confusion, the emotional crashes that followed stimulation, the logistical cleanup no one saw. I told myself this was just a phase of life, that eventually things would change, that balance would be restored. But time has a way of solidifying patterns, not softening them. The longer I carried the weight, the more natural it seemed to everyone else that I should. I stopped talking about my future, not consciously. It just felt irrelevant. Planning felt almost disloyal, as if imagining a life beyond this role meant abandoning someone. My world shrank in subtle increments until responsibility became my primary identity. There were days I felt numb, not sad, not angry, just emptied out. I moved through routines efficiently, automatically. People praised my strength, my patience. They didn't see that what looked like strength was often resignation refined into habit. The real fracture didn't come from exhaustion. It came from a single quiet realization that arrived without drama. One afternoon, while helping with something trivial, my parent looked at me and said, without malice, "I don't know what we would do without you." It was meant as gratitude, but something in me tightened because I knew the answer. They would do exactly what they were already doing. They would rely on someone else, and that someone else would become me again in a different form. The system wasn't built around love. It was built around convenience. That was when I understood the truth I had been avoiding. I wasn't being chosen. I was being defaulted to. The role didn't exist because I was the most capable. It existed because I was the most available. And availability, once proven, becomes expectation. Expectation becomes entitlement. And entitlement erases gratitude over time. The twist wasn't explosive. There was no confrontation, no dramatic boundary-setting speech. It was quieter than that, more unsettling. I realized that my siblings' power over the situation wasn't intentional. They didn't need to assert control. The structure itself protected them. As long as I continued, nothing would change. And the moment I stopped, even slightly, the illusion of balance would collapse. That was the moment the dynamic lost its hold over me, not because I left, not because I abandoned anyone, but because I finally saw the system clearly. And once you see a system, you stop personalizing it. I began to change in small, almost imperceptible ways. I stopped anticipating needs before they were expressed. I started responding instead of absorbing. I allowed silence to exist where I once filled it with effort. The world didn't fall apart. No catastrophe followed. What happened instead was revealing. Suddenly, others noticed the weight. Suddenly, conversations shifted. Suddenly, the role I had been quietly carrying became visible, not because I demanded recognition, but because I no longer concealed the cost. The power I thought others held dissolved the moment I withdrew my silent compliance. Looking back, I see that the most damaging part of unequal caregiving isn't the labor itself. It's the slow disappearance of self that happens when responsibility is never shared, only assumed, when love is measured by endurance rather than mutuality. I didn't lose my family. I lost the illusion that sacrifice must be solitary to be meaningful. And the truth is, the moment I stopped calling myself the responsible one, everyone else had to finally see what they had been standing on all along. You can download the ebook in the description. The link is in the description.